welcome everyone very warmly to this. I don't know anymore what is this in order, like how many ELOCs have we had, but this is the first one on this kind. And I'm very happy to introduce our first previous PhD student of ERNO to be presenting today. Welcome, Sanna. And now this starts a series of professors giving these presentations. And these professors are all have been once ERNO's PhD students. And I think we are about 16 or 17 at the moment, which tells quite a lot about how magnificent Professor ERNO has been and how he has been educating and growing a whole generation of educational scientists in the field. So this is Sanna's and ERNO's day. And the schedule is, I just briefly tell you how it is. We will have this short opening, and then Sanna will give maybe a 45-minute presentation, and then ERNO and Sanna will be reflecting on the talk and the issues in the presentations and the methods and such. And then after, we will have two breakout rooms for us to more kind of for small group discussions. And if you prefer not to participate in the small group discussions, I will let you know at this point. It's fine to kind of leave then, because then we will only have after that a wrap-up session. But of course, it would be nice to kind of have a good chat and talk about the question that Sanna has chosen for us. These are the previous presenters, and we will have Päivi Häkkinen next in line. That is towards the end of April. And then hopefully we will have one presenter also in May. And then we will continue in the fall. So we have some presenters there ready in the line as for the fall as well. But today we will hear about Sanna's research about socially shared regulation in learning. And I have this tradition of introducing everyone in numbers and in words. And I was very happy to find some numbers, big numbers in Scopus. So she has just crazy number of citations and even kind of like a really impressive number of articles published in Scopus, and also huge number of co-authors. So she's really clearly socially sharing very significant part of her work, which is great, wonderful, of course. Her age index is very impressive as well. And then I thought to introduce her also in words. And this is her view from her office, oftentimes. And we have been very happy to enjoy winter scenes and nature scenes and all those that she has been sharing in different occasions. But as the first word that I would like to use to describe Sanna is early, because of course she was the early president, which is wonderful, but she also got very early, I would say, her professorship, and she was also one of the earliest PhD students of ERNO, and maybe the most successful of us all. So she's our kind of example, I would say, another word, speaking, starting with E. She has shown huge number of leadership, and in these leadership positions she has presented lots of courage and example again for female researchers in the field, which is very, very nice. As from this scene also, I already told you that she is an outdoor person, clearly, and enjoys nature. And I've seen pictures of her skiing, cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, is that snow shoe walking, or what's that called? And kayaking and hiking and grilling sausages in the with a fire and all this. So combine that with the chicness that she has. Like if you have seen Sanna in any conference, she's always so elegant and chic and looks just perfectly nice and beautiful in her presentations and in all the moments. So she's again, I would say a perfect example for us in the field of how you can be a pleasant person and a leader and inspiring researcher at the same time. So welcome, Sanna. We are very happy to have you in ELOC. And now I think, if I remember right, yes, now it's your time to start your presentation. Welcome, Sanna.
Okay, thank you, Minna, very much for your all too kind words. But I have to say, you recognize something about my outdoor interest, at least. I would like to start with this picture to congratulate Erno. It has been a privilege to be your student, and this happy smile is from the dinner table from Linnunlahti Karonka after my defense already many years ago. We researchers love dinner tables, and this is the result of dinner table discussion at the Aachen early 2019 Kala dinner table. And this is also representing Erno's scientific family tree, which Minna already pointed out, which is very, very dense, and it's still growing and actually flourishing very much. But I was not part of that dinner table, but this is the result of the dinner table where some of my students and some other of your former students participated, and they decided to use a napkin when they started to discuss and draw about your family tree, which actually have an origin in Piaget, and then being Hans Ebli's student and you following him work, and we following you, and our student following all that. So we all feel that we have a little Piaget in our scientific heart. But as you see, this is only a very short description of the tree, and I'm sure that it is flourishing after us and in future. But now to my talk. I'm going to ask two questions, why and how. And I start discussing about why, and I start with some scientific phenomena, why I'm currently working with my group on this area. And I'm describe a little bit about self-regulation in general and characterize what do we mean by socially shared regulation in learning. And I also point out the difference, how do we understand regulation, what is regulation and what is not regulation. Then I continue describing, answering question how, and I especially review about our work, how we have been looking at different data modalities called multimodal data collection, and how we are struggling with that, and how this kind of approach has helped us to understand the phenomena. And perhaps I end with the why question in the end again. So why? And I start with this picture, which is very important for me. Erno might recognize the picture. This is from Joensuu. Our early studies where we were working there, Erno established there the first lab called TOTY, Tietotekniikan opetuskäytön tutkimusyksikkö, which was first, absolutely first in Finland and one of the first in Europe, interested in how we can use technology to help children learn and in education and so on. This is a picture of data collection in my dissertation. During that time, the discussion in our lab was very much dealing with these concepts. For example, we were discussing, these all follow from, has origin from Erno's earlier work, his dissertation, and also some other impressive work by so-called Turku group, Erno, Marja Vauras, Pekka Salonen, Erkki Olkinuora, and Riitta Kinnunen. For example, we were thinking and discussing about Kurt Levin's field theory, which is describing person-environment interaction in terms of different tensions. Piagetian origin about tolerance of ambiguity, these avoidance and approaching tendencies and orientations, which are very influential from Ernos, Marias, and others' work published in this paper in Educational Psychology. And also something deep in reciprocal understanding and perspectives in interaction. So the deep question was already then, and still, what else than talk can explain how people learn with technology and by the computers and together. So still we are asking the same questions and working with the same settings, but the settings are a bit different because technologies are all the time developing. It's not only people and children by through and computers, but all these technological power and algorithms and artificial intelligence and robotics and all this, which is continuously developing in interacting our human capabilities and something unique we human only have. And we're still thinking about the borderline, how we can help these human competencies so that this technology is not taking that, but supporting that. Something very safe grounding in our field is metacognition. And this is kind of origin of everything in learning. The ability that we as learners know what we know, and we know how we feel, and we can observe our own learning. We can kind of experiment with our own mind and learning, which gives us an ability to monitor and regulate our learning. Metacognition operates so that according to metacognitive monitoring, we are able to scan something what is internal in our mind, our beliefs and understanding and knowledge and so on, but also the external factors or the conditions and resources available us. We are able to operate with our goals and plans and proceed with our goals and also change and re-examine in order to adapt something which is needed. So therefore, we have been working quite a long time already with a very strong theory called self-regulated learning. It is old theory, and it is very strong theory explaining. There are actually many models under the umbrella of self-regulated learning. But basically the idea of self-regulated learning, that it tells about the process, what is needed to be a strategic and learner in order to be able to successfully proceed in your learning process and make adaptive changes in terms of your cognition and motivation and emotion whenever needed and when there are obstacles or challenges in your learning. Self-regulated learning is a cyclical phenomena, and usually the theory characterizes it with this kind of cycles, so that learners start exercising with task understanding and then setting goals and applying strategies and continuously monitoring the understanding and progress, and when needed, adapt and change. Currently, the world has changed, and we especially have been interested in collaborative learning. The need for collaborative learning is important, and I personally believe that there is a lot of power in this model. We simply need to involve with other people's expertise, and we need to collaborate in order to solve problems. There are also more and more technologies which we fluently use to interact and collaborate with people. So it gives a nice setting for computer-supported collaborative learning. The good thing is that past research tells very clearly that collaborative learning is very powerful learning methods. But the bad thing is that it also tells that it is very challenging, and very often groups don't work so that they are able to reach shared understanding or produce something shared, successfully built and collaborate new knowledge. And perhaps this definition by Paul Kirchner and colleagues tells quite nicely the definition why the collaborative learning process is so challenging. The definition tells that collaborative and socio-emotional interactions, transactions, and knowledge building processes have temporal and multidimensional nature, which in the optimal cases are successfully shared in between the collaborating partners. The definition very well describes the complexity of the phenomena, looking at the temporal phenomena, having very different multi-dimensions, cognition, motivation, affect, emotion, and also something successfully shared in a metacognitive mental level, which is not visible for us. Therefore, we have been working with collaborative learning as a setting, and identified the problem understanding all these interactions, not only interaction of these very core elements of learning process, metacognition, cognition, motivation, affect, and emotion, but all these interactions with other people, social interactions, artifacts, computers, technologies, and so on. If we still add complexity, it is that all of these components, for example, motivation, has plenty of other deep, detailed processes inside, like self-beliefs on self-efficacy or interest or so on. Still, there has been a quite helpful model to understand this complexity also in collaborative learning setting. We have been following Phil Vinnie's and Alison Hadwin's model of self-regulated learning, which is modeling in a micro level regulation. How it is modeling actually the model is called COPES inside the model, which is explaining conditions, operations, products, evaluations, and standards, how different facets of the tasks are available to students to exercise their self-regulation and activate task understanding, setting goals and plans, and enact and so on. Model is very strong and useful, but very individually oriented and also very cognitively oriented architecture. behind its model. Therefore, we have been working together with my team and Alison Hadwin's team in order to leverage this model so that we also consider not only individual level regulation, but also the reciprocal relationship between conditions and the products, both at the individual and group level. The model is still under development, but we have been able to progress in the model and the empirical evidencing of the model step by step. I've been very happy to see that the phenomena of regulation currently very intensively in discussion among the researchers in our field. Already when we were working together with Alison, the recent handbook in self-regulated learning handbook, we reviewed about more than 30 different definitions how people describe regulation. And therefore, it's very important from our perspective to describe how do we understand what is regulation and what is not regulation. And I will explain our perspective. For us and in our research, it is always response to situated challenges in a learning task. If there is no need to regulate, there is no regulation. Regulation is always about strategic adaptation by individuals or groups. It is a cyclical phenomena, not in that situation, but also taking into account all the past experiences and the beliefs and so which are contributing to regulation. It is never only dealing with cognition, but it is always multifaceted, covering cognition, motivation, emotion, and behavior. And it is never only metacognitive process, but it is always in interaction with task culture and learning environment, which are the condition and evolving features in the phenomena. What is not regulation in learning? It's also important to define from our perspective. Regulation is not an endpoint or not an outcome. It is a kind of way to set a stage for learning and collaboration and progress successfully in collaboration. It is not random adaptation. It is always intentional. It is more than coordinated action, more than interaction and more than communication, and therefore we believe that it is never possible only to code from interactions or video, translated video procedures or interactions. It is definitely not knowledge construction, and it is not collective sameness. If I try to review our understanding about socially shared regulation as a concept, there are 4 elements at least in this definition. First of all, it is always transactive, where more than individual persons are negotiating and interacting and sharing the metacognitive, cognitive, motivational and affective beliefs and expressions. It is deeply metacognitive, which means that these metacognitive processes are shared and negotiated and also made successfully coordinated among, hopefully in the best cases, among the participants for small scale or large scale adaptation. It is collectively agentic, meaning that it is dealing with goals, and making these goals and plans and conditions and settings for goals and standard for goals shared where all the participants aim. And it is also socio-historically and contextually situated so that all the beliefs in individuals' behavior or past history, but also something created in the socio-emotional interaction are part of the socially self-regulation phenomena or the conditions for that. So defining the concepts and the theory behind and the different components of the phenomena, we have been struggling quite a lot to find ways to evidence empirically the phenomena. Something very helpful has actually already from our very early Ernos Totu lab time is that we have always realized that technology is an important part for learning, also for learners to help to be a representation of something they are learning and developing their understanding, but it's also very helpful for us as researchers to find out something unobservable in learners' mind. So being a researcher in this digital world is actually wonderful, because it seems that every day we have new opportunities to implement in research. The main thing is that these new data modalities coming with various technology, they give new modalities, traces, and representations of cognition, motivation, emotion, and metacognition, which perhaps we have not had before. And using that data and information, we are better able to explain also the mechanisms of regulation in learning. Therefore, we have been working under the umbrella of multimodal data collection. Multimodal data consists of different data channels. Usually all these data channels are coming from different technologies. And we have been especially working with, or actually always work to contextualize learners' interactions. We collect data, video data, and capture their audio. We have been implementing mobile eye tracking or eye tracking. We use multi-sensor devices to track students' physiological activation. And we always implement different kind of questionnaires, quite often self-reported, situated questionnaires, but also use log data and traces about students' learning activities. It's the origin of this approach has been that we understood that we have to put a lot of effort to find ways for process-oriented and contextual data collection, so that we are able to follow about all these unobservable processes and something what is part of how groups collaborate and interact. What is the way to have an access to individual thinking, but also something they do collectively together. And therefore we have been also active and working to establish research infrastructure in our university. This is always already 10 years old, which is called LEAF, Multidisciplinary Research Infrastructure for Learning and Interaction Research in Human Sciences. But this is only a forum, or this is only infrastructure, which has been very helpful for us. But but not any result for or able to solve our methodological approaches, but it has also pushed us for more close multidisciplinary collaboration, and also pushed us to look at various ways how to analyze the data which comes from different data channels which are not common in our field in education psychology and learning sciences. Currently, we are working with a big database. We have been following 30 groups, about almost 100 students for several weeks, and so that we have repeated similar kind of collaborative learning session while students have been working in secondary school physics inquiry lessons. I have an example to show you about, this is all in authentic classroom, because we are interested in all these complexities and all these different aspects and messy, even the messiness available in these real classrooms. I will show you one example just to show you the kind of data. This is about a short snapshot from 90 minutes physics lesson where a group of students is making an inquiry on physics in a theme of light. This example happens to, as such, don't tell much about anything, but this example happens to be an example of co-regulation among these three students. As such, these kind of video episodes are very hard to convince anything about the phenomena, but combining different data channels to understand it has been our way to work with the phenomena called socially shared regulation in learning. When we look at the situation and combine physiological data, we can see that students' EDA and the physiological activation and also synchrony in the situation, and perhaps in that way are able to look at and zoom certain situations during the 90-minute session. And also when we combine students' situated self-report dealing with this lesson, we can first of all find out that these three students represent very different characters and different profiles in terms of their cognition, motivation, and emotion, and we are able to see some evidence about the cognition, motivation, and emotion in action in this situation. And following the video video analysis, we, for example, in this case, are able to see that these students, very different students, were able to synchronize or create such kind of regulation together that even having very different approaches, they were able to regulate and satisfactorily work with the task understanding and also overcome some of the challenges they clearly had during the session. So basically my example is showing perhaps the power of the different modalities, but at the same time I have to say that it's very important to look at the validity of these findings. And when we have, this was only a very short snapshot and explanation prepared for this talk, but when we have hours, tens of groups and hours of data, we probably are able to see something more with this kind of big data. Currently, few issues we have been able to progress. Our team has been working hard, and I I invite you to look at our people recent publications. They are reporting our progress in different areas in terms of cognition, metacognition, motivation in this under this phenomena. But together with our collaborators, we have been able to evidence that regulation is not only individual self-regulative phenomena, but it is also something which can be evidenced at the social level. And in the best cases, or usually it is evidenced also in temporal processes and patterns. We know from our work that it is quite often present in successful collaborative learning, not always, but this is something we believe is possible to evidence in our work. But we also see that it is very rare. You don't find it very often. I'm always surprised to find some results where people are able to code and find, for example, plenty of socially shared regulation. Our work does not show it. We also know that socially shared regulation is not a kind of own entity, but it continuously is playing with all types of regulation. And it is clear that the role of co-regulation is important to reificate socially shared regulation and self-regulation. We also know that metacognitive monitoring is something which drives groups for such kind of collaborative interactions, that it helps them for small scale adaptation and change in their strategies or plans. And currently we are also quite confident that the way we have chosen to work multimodal data, there are possibilities to indicate such kind of evidence which we are interested in, which are inviting regulation, and then we are able to study the phenomena. There are also 3 teams what we are currently working, also under the different concept and perspectives among our team. Building on our earlier evidence, the kind of hypotheses or questions we are working at the moment are dealing with regulatory processes in collaborative learning, which especially are manifesting in socio-emotional interaction. And that is from the cognitive perspective, but also from the emotion perspective. And therefore, we are working to find new ways to evidence that. And currently, we are working with facial recognition and looking for visual cues, whether these are giving us a new opportunity to understand those issues. We are also quite confident about the role of temporal data to explain adaptive and maladaptive patterns of socially shared regulation. And therefore, with our bigger database, we are now working with different methods to make more general level of predictions and models which we could explain with more detailed analysis like facial recognition or even qualitative analysis. And the third issue we are quite much wrestling is this unobservable shared metacognitive processes in collaborative learning. Even though we have multiple kind of data channels, we are still in trouble to find ways to analyze what are the valid ways of using analytical methods to work with this data is our question at the moment. As an example, we have been expanding to machine learning models and try to find different ways to detect, for example, patterns for different interactions and look at different large-scale patterns and models and in our data. And also we are currently working with academic professor Going Chow to look at visual cues and micro gestures whether this is a helpful way for us. This seems to be a bit challenging because the earlier of these methods are designed for individual gestures and individual micro features, but we are also exploring that whether this is something what can be done in a group condition. Few issues I would like to add to my talk is this analytics part, which is very difficult, even though there is a lot of enthusiasm about these different data channels and always have been. And because of technology, we are able to have a bigger data. It has also positive aspects, but it also has something we should be very careful and consider deeply. In all, I think that having this kind of approach in this area has speeded up our research to understand the phenomena, mainly because having these different channels, we have been able to reveal something in complexity and especially various range of cognitive and non-cognitive processes at the same time. Another power of this method is that all these adaptation, temporality, cyclical processes, tendencies, patterns, part of self-regulation and part of collaborative learning are better to be able to capture with these kind of methods. Also, bigger data may give opportunities for more evidence. Bigger data does not mean bigger evidence, but on that way we are able to look at models and patterns and then combine our more detailed deep level analysis and then discuss those approaches together. But at the same time, I'm very much currently inviting colleagues to discuss about epistemological issues in this kind of approach in our field. And my big question is that what we are struggling ourselves in my work and our team, do data correspond to the observed events? And if we look at these two worlds, we are always investigating humans, which are, as this little girl in this picture, we are agentic and interpretive, and we use all the resources around us, part of social interactions, and all these are part of in our situations and how we interpret things and how we act according to that. And if we look at the data we get out of these new models and methods, they gives us a very nice patterns and sequences and regularities and causalities. And the question, of course, is that how much we lose of the phenomena when we work with this kind of approach. I think at the moment it's not contradictory, but it is both and. But the balance is not clear, and there is a lot of questions to be asked and answered to make this valid for us to investigate how people learn. Then few last issues. I think the third question dealing with analytics issue is that we probably have to also ask that what multimodal data require from theory. And quite many models we have in our hands at the moment are rather remote from the phenomena. For example, Phil's Cope's model is very difficult to operationalize or very difficult to look at in the data in the real context. And therefore, perhaps we have to think about either new theory or theory in a different way, because the different modalities of self-regulation or socially shared regulation, they are not a nice parallel system, but they are perhaps related to each other as a kind of layers. And therefore, we don't have any exact single concept which could explain something about the phenomena, but we have to look at how they are coordinated, and perhaps then the different modalities are helpful, but the theories don't nicely fit, or the data does not fit nicely to the theories or concept at the moment. But what we believe is that multimodal data can help us to test explanations, and step by step also perhaps look at the causal explanations in our findings. And this is the discussion we originated with together with Maria Bannert in our recent special issue. At least we try to start a race discussion in this area. Okay, so perhaps my last why question and my last remarks. Why we are working in this field, and why we feel it's still important to continue working in the area of socially shared regulation. It is very interesting to see how all this algorithm world and developing technology gives us very important and interesting possibilities to develop different kind of adaptive systems, so that something can be made aware, which helps us in our metacognitive monitoring, for example, and helps us to see how we are progressing and how do we understand and so on. But I think that our original aim is that we don't want this adaptive system, but we after all want learners to learn to be adaptive. So therefore I think we want to continue struggling in theory building for developing understanding and metrics to measure socially shared regulation, and therefore eventually help this little boy in learning to be more adaptive. And actually my last slide is thank you, and I thank this opportunity. It's a privilege to participate on this birthday present to Erno, to congratulate. And I know that my whole team, LET, Learning and Educational Technology, also sends you warm wishes and congratulations. And all the work I'm presenting is, of course, collaborative work with my research team.
Thank you, Sanna. And now it's time for Erno and you to start discussing. So I don't know, Erno, would you wish Sanna to stop sharing the slides? Maybe that's the best, because we want, it's kind of nice if you both are on the screen.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe this is better that we can see more people. So thank you very much, Sanna, for your extremely interesting presentation. I know a lot of your work from last 2-3 decades, but there was details in this presentation that I really enjoyed listening you. And I would like to start with a kind of very general, even more kind of philosophical question, which is related to the social phenomena. We look at regulation as a socially shared regulation. Then the question where it is located and the kind of ontology of that. Is it something which can be reduced to individuals, or is it something which we cannot reduce to the participating individuals, but somehow exist on social level?
I think I have this original little PSA in myself, and I think it's always the individual. It is part of learning is after all individual effort, but if we are able to work together and get use of other people's thinking, then, for example, this regulation, thinking about your thinking, have to be externalized, so that externalization is negotiated in social interaction. And that's the problem in regulation. It's not a talk, but you have to activate your self-regulation first as an individual participant. And therefore, co-regulation may play the important role in order to reach the socially shared regulation.
Sure. Yes, and of course, then this kind of interpretation makes it also more realistic to think that we can learn the skills which are needed for high-level collaboration and regulation. If that would be something which is really happening on social level and not reducible to individual levels, then a group can learn to work in very high levels, but the individual moving from one group to another cannot bring these skills with them to new environments. But have you been looking at that, so that the role of this kind of skillful individuals who can help the whole group to enhance the level of regulation? And is it so that it's a combination of certain people, or is it so that the same people can be kind of powerful members in groups independently in which group they are collaborating?
We are currently working on that. We are looking more about the participation and the role of the socio-emotional interaction. But I don't believe that the critics or the question we quite often get is that how about if some groups are more experienced or some students are very, very skillful in collaboration. They may be very skillful in collaboration, but that may be more on a social interaction level, not really in the deep level thinking and what we really aim for, what means to learn together and develop something together. And that fluent social interaction is very different than the fluent engagement in collaborative learning. I think there is something important we still have to understand and look at these different individuals and their skills, but I don't think that it has that, because already social psychology tells quite a lot about the dominance of some people and difference between female and male and all these issues. There is a place for this kind of question and research. We have been looking at about high-level self-regulated or high regulators and low regulators as something about contrasting different matched groups and look at that. But not that clearly that I could say something about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, it's quite complex question, but this is important what you mentioned, that this seemingly very fluent social interaction is not always beneficial for deep learning, and we easily kind of misinterpret which group is powerful which kind of group activities are important for in-depth learning of complex issues. But then one kind of argument for studying collaboration and enhancing collaboration is that this is more and more the way how people will work after the formal schooling. And I don't remember exactly from what I have been reading for of your group, but have you ever been looking this collaboration outside formal educational situations, for example, in working life situations?
We have a new funding and we are starting study, which is now postponed, but we are trying to do that in work teams, but no, because it's so complex. And we are more skillful working with teachers and students in school. And I think that has been something very important to understand thoroughly still in that context. But I think, and I have seen papers and I have seen teams taking the phenomena also to the workplace teams. But I don't know, we haven't been seriously thinking about making research in that area yet.
Yes. Yes, of course, it's too much for one group to do everything in this area, but this is something what I personally think would be very interesting in the future to look these processes also in various working contexts, and because the problem often in these work-life studies done in working life is not going so deep in analyzing the regulatory processes and looking what makes collaboration successful. But then exactly this question that the relationship between regulation, so that self-regulation, co-regulation, or socially said regulation, how it is related to the success of collaborative learning. Of course, our general theoretical kind of hypothesis is that these are something which makes successful learning possible, but is it always so?
It has been very hard for us to evidence this, mainly because perhaps our not enough thorough data, and only recently we have put more effort on measuring also the quality of the learning and so on. Yes, if we evidence socially shared regulation among the groups, it is very often so that those groups who be able to read socially shared regulation also do the best products or achieve the goals. But achieving socially shared regulation is not necessarily only, and it's very much playing that there are those strong self-regulators, and our very recent analysis and for example coding's this big video data set tells about the role of co-regulation, how important it is. And actually co-regulation is inviting students for self-regulate, and if they self-regulate, they in best cases, the group is also able to read socially shared regulation.
Yes, but yes, I agree. But in the beginning, you mentioned that self-regulation and then also regulation on group level happens when there's a need for that. So that there's need for regulation, and that is probably the explanation that if you look at regulation or socially said regulation, it can be that it's because there's a lot of need for that, so that they are struggling with learning or struggling with solving problems, and then that already explains why it is not so easy to get evidence that a lot of socially set regulation leads to high learning outcomes or high collective products, because there's some problems which which creates the need for regulation. So that's probably one of the issues here. But then, yes, please, Sanna.
No, and this is the typical confusion we can see, for example, in some discussions or how people understand regulation concept, because then they are interfering that with knowledge construction, and that's regulation is not the way to progress in your learning, but it is something quite rare, but absolutely needed in order to have a deep learning process.
Sure, yes. So that it's. And then, what is very interesting in the work you are doing now is the attempt to use different data and the multimodality in general. And but there is also interesting, let's say, and challenge what you already discussed, because if we look the regulation processes, they are intentional processes, so that's clearly an intentional process. But then when we go to these physiological measures, for example, or even eye tracking, then only a part of, let's say, eye movements are intentional, and a part of that is unintentional or not consciously controlled. And these layers of intentionality or awareness is very interesting question, but probably very challenge for combining data from the different sources. Already there's a lot of discussion about that in eye tracking field, which I have been following, and we are doing that research ourselves as well. That how eye tracking is related to cognitive processes, so that it's not kind of one-to-one correspondence, but it is much more complex.
Yes, in general, I would very much call for discussion about all this question in our field, because on one hand, our field has progressed very much and very fast in past years because of all these new data collection methods. But there's also danger that we are changing too much to the phenomena which is not originally something how human, like everything is still very much in our beliefs and in our belief system, and how we have the tendency and experiences and so on. It's not dealing with reactions or actions. And many of these new data collection methods are telling something about reaction or as you see, some immediate focus or so.
Yes, but that's a more general challenge, and I would say also a problem in the whole learning analytics tradition. So that because often for the learning analytics, the data is very kind of atomistic, and we do not know exactly what these data units are describing. But then with huge amount of that has been dealt with with machine learning algorithms, and we get some results. But how these results are related then to this kind of more conscious thinking and learning processes, that's not always so clear. But nevertheless, I think that this possibility to collect data not only based on observations, so not only based on some learning outcomes, it helps us to go deeper in the theoretical thinking as well. But on the same time, it's very important to have this kind of reflective discussion all the time, that what is the nature of that data. For example, the physiological measures, what do they tell? So empirically we can connect it with some intentional activities, so that some connection or some temporal connections are there, but then for the theory building, we have to know more deeply, at least have some hypotheses that how they could be collected. But this, what you are doing, I think, is a good attempt to go forward with these ideas. Then, what do you think that this multimodal data collection, is it something which in future will only be part of the research activities, or do you think that they could at least partly be applied, for example, in teaching learning situations as a feedback mechanisms? One of the speakers in this series was Pierre Dillenburg, and Pierre seems to believe that this kind of method could be applied also as a part of teaching learning processes. But what is your opinion about that?
We are following, well, I think it's evident as we are now monitoring ourselves with all these kind of rings and things like that. So it's, I think that the business is making business also out of this, and we are quite actively follow our colleagues' work who are working with these adaptive systems. But the problem is that the adaptive systems are helpful for a short time. As this scripting research already pointed out, that you can do very nice scripting and get very good results, but that's only for that kind of moment. And I'm a bit worried about this automatic system or this super adaptive system, that they kind of keep learners and learning situations dependent on them. And this is not what we want, but we want to strengthen the learners and their skills. Perhaps why not taking something for teacher education, or showing something, and this is way how things work and how this learning happens, and can you see this and that. So in that ways, or taking these ideas to the working teams and show that this is how we work, and but not as a kind of everyday, every school. I don't think so. We have this history, as you know, that there has been all kind of fancy technologies, and next year there will be new. I don't believe, as Pierre does, that strongly, but perhaps for some, they might have a role for something.
Yes, I agree. There are some opportunities where, for example, we have had quite good experiences in using, for example, eye tracking modeling as a teaching tool for very, very specific questions, and that's in the field of medical expertise development, so that how people learn to use new medical imaging technologies and integrate them, and there the eye tracking modeling can be applied, but I don't see very many opportunities in regular primary school classrooms for that.
I wonder if this would be a good time to go to the breakout rooms. It's just really great to listen to you two enthusiastically talking about learning and these issues, but now maybe I can share the screen. And Sanna prepared us. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good.